and that's the Oklahoma Sooners. Year 2 of Brett Venables. Fresh, I'll let you take first crack at the Oklahoma Sooners.
I mean, that last year, that defense under Venables was absolutely horrendous. The offense could score, the defense couldn't stop anybody. That's going to have to be the biggest adjustment. That's what his namesake is, building defenses. He's going to have to get that figured out and solved. That's not the biggest question for me, though. The biggest question for me is Dillon Gabriel at quarterback, or are they going to hand the reins over immediately to freshman Jackson Arnold? Dillon Gabriel, the dude is continuing to keep playing. Talk about someone who's on a doctoral program. But at what point do you, as a group, as a team, I want to call them a franchise. Now everyone gets NIL. I think we can still call them franchises. Do you give it to Jackson Arnold and let him just roll with it? Because obviously last year the offense was there, but they didn't win football games. Somebody's got to shake it up a little bit. So I think that's going to be an interesting conversation of how that plays out in that quarterback situation. Because Arnold comes in with a lot of fame, a lot of accolades from high school, and you're going to eventually have to hand it over anyway because Gabriel's been there for 30 years between there and UCF. But that's going to be the number one thing. How do they address the quarterback situation? At what point do they make that decision on who it's going to be? And if it's Gabriel and he struggles early, do they pull the plug and go to Arnold early on in the season for the betterment of the rest of the year? That's going to be the biggest question. The second one, how do you make up for losing your two offensive tackles that are starters? Marvin Mims, Eric Gray, a host of others. You lost a lot of veteran playmakers. Where does the rest of this receiver talent and this offensive playmakers come from? The depth chart, you're going to have to rely on a lot of freshmen, a lot of guys who do not have much experience to score points and move the football. That's going to require this coaching staff for Oklahoma and whoever's at quarterback to be on the same page the entire time and from the very start. Oklahoma recruits itself. And I think that's where we all need to get that and understand it. 80% of your recruits, they're going to see Oklahoma. I'm getting recruited by Oklahoma. They're going to be 4 stars or 3 stars depending, or maybe a fringe 3 or 4. They're going to go to Oklahoma. It's getting the elite players, and that's where the coaches have to separate and get the elite players. For the most part, you're going to have talent there at Oklahoma, but how do they develop them? How do they get the elite guys to play at their best? And how are they able to get wins where they should and not avoid the clunker losses? You averaged 474 yards a game last year. You led the Big 12. You had the best offense. You scored 32.8 points a game, which was 5th in the Big 12. This team was not shy to score points on the board. The defense, though, like we said earlier, was terrible. And what has Venables done in that past year? What has he done through spring practice? How is his team working through the summer? What's he going to do in fall practice? And how are they going to perform when the games actually matter? He got whitewashed by Texas last year. Absolutely throttled in his first ever matchup there. How do you go back to the Red River Shootout and avenge that? Do you show up and get beat down again, become a waste? Or do you actually show up and get this team to play for you and make a statement? Because that game is we're going to find out what this true programming direction is under Brett Venables. When they go in there to Dallas, if they lose, but if they lose in a hard football game, we at least know they're going to be tough and they're ready to play, like they did versus Florida State in the bowl game. If they go in and get slaughtered again, then we know that Venables has not had this team's pulse, and this team is going to wash away. At that point, do you cut bait? You can't let Oklahoma fall too far away because eventually going to the SEC, you cannot become cannon fodder at that point. This is a big year for Venables and how he has a pulse in this team and where does he take these players and how do the players actually play up to their recruitable ability and how do they play up to the standards of Oklahoma football. You've got to make tough decisions now. You can't just play guys because they've been there forever or they've been a 3-year starter. It's not just your job on the line. It's the program standard and winning and the pride of all the alums. Look what happened to Miami. Miami's been terrible for a long time. Everyone keeps thinking, oh, the U is back, the U is back, the U is back. They're still terrible. All the former players stop caring eventually because it becomes the same situation. This thing, you don't want this to happen in Oklahoma, and that's where this kind of teeters in the balance right now with Brett Venables and this program. Where do you go? How do you get these players? Is it your quarterback? How do you fix the defense? Where do we get these things going forward and moving forward? You can't give up 30 points a game this year. You gave up 29.6. You can't do that. And the sad thing is, that was only 8th in the Big 12. That just shows you the defense of the Big 12. You're giving them 30 points a game, and you weren't the worst. They avoid Kansas State, they avoid Baylor, and they avoid Texas Tech. That means you get the newbies, you get the Houstons, you get the UCFs. You have a chance against Cincinnati. Get Baylor. You have a chance to get some wins against some teams who are making that transition from I would say group of five, elite group of five to the Big 12. Do you take advantage of opportunities or do you lay down and get beat by them and then become just brushed aside? This has to fall in Oklahoma. Where's the pride of Boomer Sooner? How do you guys get it done? You could be really, really, really good and have a ceiling of 11 wins, but you could have a floor of 7. What Boomer Sooner program are we going to see this year? Are we going to see a forgotten, great team, or are we going to see a team that had a 1 year bump in the road and Venables is the right guy moving it forward? That's where I want to see what happens right now. Which quarterback, how does the defense get fit, and how does Brett Venables guide this team mentally between the ears to keep playing at the highest and the best they possibly can? It's a ceiling of 11 and a floor of 7 for me in Norman, Oklahoma.
Fresh, I know everyone's going to want to talk about Dillon Gabriel versus Jackson Arnold, and rightfully so. Dillon Gabriel, we thought going into last year, this was an amazing fit at Oklahoma. He lit it up when he was at UCF, but the same problem happened at Norman that happened to him in Orlando. He couldn't stay healthy. He gets knocked out of the game, and all of a sudden, the wheels kind of fall off. Jackson Arnold is an amazing freshman quarterback coming in. And it's tough to have the expectations for him to start year one. But I think that because that's the conversation, something is missing with this Oklahoma team. And I think that if I'm Brett Venables and I'm trying to say, how can I get the Oklahoma alumni behind me? How can I get all of the support? How can I build up like everyone wanting to talk about Boomer Sooner football going into year one of the SEC? One, you're spot on. Right. The defense has got to be better. Brett Venables, you made your name. You got this head coaching job because of your prowess as a defensive coordinator. That's part one. But part two, I'm going old school. I am going old school, and I'm not going to sit there and put the football in the hands of my quarterback to start. I am going to turn around and I am going Javante Barnes, and we maybe were a year early because if you roll back the tape, and I went back and I looked at what we said about Oklahoma. There's an incoming freshman, Gavin Sawchuk. When we might have been a year early, only played in 2 games last year. But the kid had a really good game against Florida State last year. And Florida State played that game with nothing to lose. They didn't hold a bunch of guys out. 15 carries, 100 yards, a touchdown, 6.7 yards a carry. Oklahoma, run the football. You have 2 workhorse backs back there. I'm going thunder and lightning, old school type of running game, fresh. I'm going Oklahoma is going to run the ball 40 times a game and take away that pressure that the quarterback's going to face. Now, is running the football 40 times a game and putting all of my eggs into the basket of these 2 running backs, is it good enough to win me the Big 12? Probably not. Probably not. I'm probably going to run into either Texas or maybe Oklahoma State, maybe K-State there. I don't know. But I'm going to tell you this, it's going to be good enough to get me to 9 wins, 10 wins. And everyone wants to see, hey, and then you know what kicks in though, Fresh? The most powerful thing for Oklahoma kicks in. Nostalgia. And if
I
I
thought you were
go,
going to say tornadoes.
well, that's true. That could be anywhere though. That could be Kansas too. But I'm saying the power of nostalgia kicks in, and all of a sudden people go, Brett Venable, he gets us. We're a run-first football team. We're a power-eye football team. They get back to thinking of the days of Adrian Peterson. They get back to thinking of that smash mouth football that Oklahoma was known for. And I think that would buy Brett Venables a lot of time. I think that would get him a chance to figure out, okay, is Dillon Gabriel my best shot? Or is it going to be Jackson Arnold? And if it is Jackson Arnold, I'm going to need a running game to really take care of him. They got the transfer. Interesting thing, they got the wide receiver transfer from Texas. I thought that was very fascinating. Brennan Thompson, the 4-star wide receiver who transferred over there. Interesting then. Who's going to step up and take Marvin Mims' place? I got that question too. But Fresh, I'm looking at their schedule. If this team isn't 5-0 going into the Red River rivalry on October 7th, something's wrong. Like something's
Oh yeah,
seriously
definitely
wrong
wrong.
here. But then you take a look, they're off the week after Red River. You go UCF, Kansas. You got to go to Stillwater for Bedlam. But it's weird to me that Bedlam is November 4th this year. Like,
Right.
I
I
don't
think
get.
they're trying to keep it away from maybe both teams aren't. They don't expect both teams to be that good. They want to move it away from the spotlight.
I don't know. But then you finish off the year West Virginia at home, at Provo against BYU, could be a trap game. But then we just sat there talking about TCU. We expect them to take a step back. That second half of the season, you're looking at, could this be an 11-win team? Now, I'm going to tell you, if they're an 11-win team, I'm worried that they're going to be a paper tiger and they're going to be a paper champion. But you know what? It doesn't matter to the fans of Oklahoma. Like, you're an 11-win team. Great. Who cares that our non-con schedule is Arkansas State, SMU, and Tulsa?
Nope, nobody cares. And you know what? I like what you mentioned about getting old school and running the football. There's a certain Big Ten team that hasn't done it pretty, but they've been in the back-to-back college football playoffs. Jim
Yep.
Harbaugh, he comes up there and he's put two tight ends on the field. They're running the ball 40 times a game. They're taking the air out of it. They're playing great defense.
Right.
He's doing it his own way. Maybe you have to change the initiative and change the focus of the team to win football games. I don't care how you do it. Nobody cares how
Right.
you do it as long as you win the football game.
Yeah. Can you imagine what, after going 6-7 last year, can you imagine like how that fan base would rebound if you're all of a sudden we're looking late November and Oklahoma's a 9-win football team? And here's the thing. I know Texas boat raced Oklahoma last season. I mean, it was absolutely like, I'm sitting there having flashbacks of the Rocky 3 where he's throwing the damn towel, like the guy's screaming from the corner, 49-0. I don't expect that to be 49-0 this year. That game's going to be closer. Now, I still will have Texas favored in that game, but it's not a crazy stretch to say that Oklahoma could win. That's a rivalry game. Oklahoma could win
Mm-hmm.
that game. If Oklahoma wins Red River, this schedule is set up to be an undefeated schedule. Like,
Well, if they win that, they're in a great spot, and Sark might get fired before he gets back to Austin at the same time. So that game could be a big deal for everybody.
yeah, that'd be great. If I'm Oklahoma, I beat my rivals. I'm 6-0, and I just made them fire their head coach. And then all sorts of craziness pops off at Texas. But I don't know. I got them. I'm going to say my floor for them is 9 wins. This schedule is really, really easy. I don't want to call it like there's another one that there's another place that I got something. I'm not going to refer to it just yet there, but this is a very, very easy schedule.
And just imagine if the SEC had kept Georgia on the schedule for Oklahoma instead of taking them off this past year.
It would have been
That would have been a lot tougher for them to survive, I think,
right.
obviously. But it did them a service and actually remove the game from Georgia's schedule.
Right. And it really does help everybody out in this regards there. I'm looking at this 9-win season as the floor for Oklahoma this year. I would be more close to kind of lean towards that 10 number. But I'm going to play conservative and make sure, because I can't trust Venables to do what I'm saying to do. And maybe I'm wrong here. Who knows? But I'm going to say their floor is 9 wins. And I'd say their ceiling is an easy 11. And I think, if I was placing some money on this thing, I would really, if the over under is like 9.5 or 8.5, I would be hammering that over.